So hey, I'm Alan. I'm the lead engineer in the Zendesk support mobile apps team. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about our experience about rebuilding and relaunching our mobile apps. And I say mobile apps because I work on both iOS and Android, so I kind of cross the divide a little bit. A little bit of a warning when I dry around this in work. A lot of people said I use very Zendesk specific terms, so I figured I'd give you a bit of jargon just so when I say things like tickets, you kind of know what I mean. So what is a ticket? Ticket is the integral part of what Zendesk is. It's a single thread of communication with a customer. And it's what our agents use to communicate with their customers. And it's what the core focus of our app is to interact and view and update tickets. And triage. Triage is another important aspect of interacting with tickets. And it's making those decisions on whether you need to work on this right now, whether someone else needs to do it, or whatever sort of follow-up things need to be done. So those are the two key important things. So if you hear me say triage or tickets, you now know what I'm talking about. But this is what we're really here to talk about is why did we need to rebuild, or why did we think we needed to rebuild? And so before I joined Zendesk, there was just one person. He wasn't working in Dublin, he was working from his house just outside of Edinburgh. And he was the sole engineer responsible for working on iPhone, iPad, Android, and even BlackBerry. And so he was a little bit overworked, and so then I joined the team. And so we decided to split the work 50-50. He worked on iOS and I worked on Android. And we continued like this for quite a while, and it seemed to work pretty well. We were able to push out new features to production. We had a pretty stable crash-free session count at about 99.9%. Depending on point releases from Apple, we might find some bugs. But Zendesk realized that this couldn't work to scale to our ambition. We wanted to build bigger and greater things, and 2 people just weren't going to be enough. So quickly, we decided we needed to be roughly this many people. That's probably not an accurate number, but within about 18 months, we were 6 people. And scaling to 6 people from 1 person to 2 people to 6 was really kind of hard. And scaling a team is really hard. And what we realized pretty quickly is we had a lot of technical debt. When people came to our team, they couldn't understand our code base, and making changes was hard. We were comfortable in that code base because we'd been making changes for the last 9 months. And so we understood it, but when you brought someone else into the team, this picture was kind of pretty common. Bringing an engineer into the team, they were like, huh, what the fuck is this? Why did you do this? And so we lacked basic documentation. It was really hard to explain to people the how, the why, and mainly the why. But thinking about our iOS code, we very much suffered from this, massive view controllers. We had a lot of code in our view controller that did a lot of things. Most of it should have been model code that could have been tested, but it was super hard to maintain. We didn't have basic logging. If you had to reproduce something, we generally had to ask a customer if we could use their account to prove it out because we couldn't. And we often made attempts at refactoring and re-engineering. And it's a bit like Samuel's kind of rat's nest. It's this tangled ball of yarn. And every time we tried to untangle it, it just got more tangled. And it was really hard to do. The only one success we had at that point was we rewrote our API client, or refactored it, I should say. And we were able to delete about 50% of the code base while still maintaining the same kind of interface surface for our API client. And that was a great win, but we couldn't repeat the same thing on iOS. We had too much UI kit code down where it shouldn't have been, and too much model code up in view controllers where it shouldn't have been. So we made the decision that enough was enough. We've been banging our head against a brick wall for too long. We needed to rewrite our app. But in Zendesk, we care a lot about design. It's quite important to us. It's what our founders founded the term beautifully simple. So when it came to revamping our code, we also decided we needed to revamp our interface to make it more up-to-date and more what people expect from a mobile app. And this is a quote from one of our designers, Jason Wu. Answering tickets can be quite lonely for agents. And so, when you're just looking at your phone, our app only allowed you to see what the work that was assigned to you. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense to us. So we did some Photoshop wizardry and we came up with this concept. And it was the idea of having a feed of information that allowed an agent to get a holistic view of what was going on in their organization. It allowed them to see trending tickets, whether there was an outage, if there was some customer feedback, or just that a customer had given them a good CSAT rating. A good CSAT is when an agent completes a ticket, the customer has asked them to rate that agent's performance. And so they give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And agents, that's their kind of raison d'etre, is CSAT. And so after the Photoshop wizardry, we needed to go and test this concept out with our users. So we recruited a bunch of users. We set up a lot of Skype calls and Zooms. And we started asking them and showing them this concept. And this is some of the quotes that we got from those users. So this is a support agent who works on the weekend. And her job is to make sure that the incoming queue of tickets gets routed to the right agents. And she woke up every morning on a Saturday 20 minutes early to use her laptop rather than use our mobile app when she was out and about doing her day job, doing her weekend thing. And as a mobile app developer, when you hear someone willing to get up and do work from bed on a laptop rather than use your app, it kind of makes you sad. This support lead, one of the managers, said, "Recent tickets is the most uniquely useless feature that we have." These were all really great points, but when we kept bringing users back to our feed concept, they just couldn't get past these basic usability feature gaps that we had in our app. So we were left with no alternative but to go back to the drawing board. So starting again, new idea. We listened to all that feedback and we followed this. It's a design sprint. Google Ventures have a great website, you should read it. But the idea is taking some themes or some concepts and iterating on them like you would development. But rather than waste time or spend time doing high fidelity prototypes or highly functional prototypes, you focus on getting to the core value of the solution you're trying to build. And so we focused around 5 core themes. And we assembled a group of designers, engineers, and PMs, even people outside of the mobile organization, just so that we weren't no unconscious bias as to what we were doing. So here's a picture of what we have. On the left-hand side of the board are the 5 themes that we were working towards, and here are some of the pictures of low-fidelity mock-ups that we were building. We followed IDEO and their idea of diverge and converge thinking, and so each of the teams split off into little clusters, and we came up with some kind of radical ideas. Nothing was not too any crazy, and so we even came up with this idea of Tinder tickets, right? If you could have a list of tickets and if you could assign a binary operation to left and right actions, so you could either assign it to tier 1 or throw it in the bin. That was the kind of idea that we came up with. Some other ideas that we came up with was the idea of having actions on notifications and actions from the ticket list. We then took all these ideas, we scored them, ranked them, picked the ones that we thought were best and best met the needs of our users, and then we decided to validate our ideas. So what we did is the design team came up with some higher fidelity mock-ups, and we went to a thing called a Zendesk University. So we all basically lingered outside of a conference room while people were learning how to use Zendesk, and we kind of pounced on them as they came out, and bribing them with swag and asking them to give us critical feedback as to how we were using our app, how they use our app today, and how our new concept worked. So this is a picture of our team. One of the other features we used, which was pretty cool, was using Lookback. So Lookback is an SDK that you can embed within your app or use another app, and this is a video. I don't know, yeah, it's not playing on my screen. But this is Guillermo, he's an account manager at Zendesk, and he uses our app to keep an eye on his customers when they report issues. And so what we use this for is to record both the user's interactions, but also their kind of reaction when they're doing different operations. So it's super useful, and it allows you to also capture the audio of the discussion when they're asking questions about different pieces of the interface. So, we got all the research done, we distilled that down, we refined what our design was and refined what it is that we were going to build, and then we decided we needed to go build it. So, first things first, we had an offsite. So this is our team. we took ourselves off to a small house out in a remote part of Ireland for 3 days, and we bootstrapped our project. It was pretty exciting time, you know, it's greenfield code, you know, your first class, your first view controller, and we got a lot done in 3 days. As I mentioned before, design and engineering is an integral part of what we do, both as app developers and as designers. And so we used pretty much every tool there is to try and find a vocabulary that worked for both design and engineers to collaborate together. So some of these tools you might be familiar with are obviously Xcode, but there's Principle, Sketch, Framer, and Zeppelin. We use Principle quite a lot for motion design, turning those animations into something that we can actually build using core animation. That was super cool. Here is some screenshots of bits of our component library. So within Zeppelin, we have a giant component library. And what it is every different element decomposed. These red boxes are as a result of what we found out was the first time we took the component library and tried to start implementing parts of it, we realized the frame boxes that Sketch use don't translate very well into UIKit. So what we had to do is we figured out each of these frames to size them correctly. We went into Xcode, we created basically simple UI and started manipulating the frames and then taking screenshots, overlaying into the original design and figuring out these red boxes to essentially allow us to get to the pixel perfect UI. And it's a painstaking effort. This took like a week of a developer and a designer collaborating on each component and making sure that we could be pixel perfect. Push notifications. One of the other features that we realized is that our customers wanted to be notified more about what was going on in their Zendesk. Previously we had a canned set of rules, so we had 4 different things that you could be notified on: priority, state change event, a status state change event, commenting, and if you've been assigned a ticket. Didn't let you know about anything else, only those 4 things. So we built a giant piece of back-end infrastructure. And this diagram has a lot of things in it, and it's not really important what it is, but essentially we call it Pigeon, like a messenger pigeon. It's a piece of infrastructure that basically drives everything we do with push notifications. So Pigeon is watching out for every database event that occurs in Zendesk. We filter out transactions at the database level that aren't important to us, and then we roll up some of those database transactions into what we call higher order events. We then re-enqueue them back into Kafka, and then we consume them. The Pigeon worker in the center of this is like the rules engine. It takes things like presence information, user state, and the rules that they've configured in terms of how they want to be notified, and that basically in turn ends up sending a message to Amazon SNS and ultimately the user. What that means is we build something that processes about 7 billion events a month and turns out to be 27 million push notifications a month. And all that to just send one of these. It's a lot of effort, but what it's given us is a flexible platform that allows our customers to get the notifications they want and allows us to build new features more rapidly. One of the things that I always find quite interesting when looking at a GitHub a project is the commit history. And so this is our commit history. And one of the things that you'll see is that dip while we were working on this project. It's because we made a product decision to deliver some features to our old app while we were, so we had to context switch, went over to our old app, delivered a bunch of features, and then slowly had to pick our way back up and build up our velocity back to when we released. Even though we were building 1.0, we still enjoyed Christmas, and you can see around November when we released, and even post-release, we still enjoyed Christmas. So 15th of November, we shipped, and it was an amazing time. We built this, and this is great. And it was a really exciting time. It was nervous. We all sat in a conference room. We had screens everywhere with Fabric, with Crashlytics, with App Store reviews. We were watching everything like a hawk. And for the next 6 weeks, we pretty much spent each week shipping out a point release. As Matthias mentioned on Monday, on the first day, we wrote brand new code, and it wasn't kind of production hardened like most people's code. So it was 1.0 code base, and so we needed to spend some time hardening it and fixing bugs. But we're now 9 months on from there. So what have we learned? So for the majority of the team, this was their first big release. Beyond myself, everyone else on the team had never released a big project. We were all mostly junior engineers, and so naturally we learned a lot. A big thing that was important to us was having analytics is one thing, trusting the data is another, and then using it to make decisions is also another thing. We actually learned that the way we had instrumented our old app was producing a lot more noise than signal. So when we wanted to extract value in terms of what our user behavior was, what they were doing, how they were doing it, when they were doing it, it made it very difficult for us to do that. For example, we were tracking the back button press on view controllers. If you use this can't press back, we've got really big problems, right? So the value in tracking that event wasn't really there. But data only tells one side of the story. It doesn't give any context. For example, as we were getting closer to our big release, we had one thing to do. We either delay the release or we cut some features. And so we had to cut some features. And part of the decision process was to look at our data and make that decision. What we didn't realize was if you look at a month for an event, something like deleting a ticket, on a month window slice, deleting a ticket doesn't happen very often. But if you look at weekends, deleting tickets happens a lot. And what it is support managers, support agents at the weekend are like deleting spam or deleting tickets that don't need to be actioned or doing all sorts of random things at the weekend to try and keep their numbers great. And we just cut it because on that month view it didn't look very important. But we quickly heard in our App Store reviews that it did matter. It was more important than actually being able to update a ticket for some customers. The other thing we learned is listening to our customers is key, right? And what we did is we embedded our SDK directly into our app. So we have a feedback section in our app, and everybody, customers can post everything from bug reports to feature requests, and even occasionally they post kudos. They thank us for what we're doing. So be brave, have as big a beta as you can. We learned this the hard way. So we have about 100,000 monthly active users, and I think our beta was maybe 150 users, active users. And so as a percentage term, that's really low, right? And so when it comes to hearing feedback, it's really hard to distill whether that's noise, whether that's someone that just doesn't like what we're doing, or whether it's actually a bug, or whether we've completely missed the boat on something. And so it was really hard to, so signal versus noise was a really big problem. But making wholesale changes like we did is super jarring for our users. So people may not be familiar with our old app, but this is what our old app used to look like. So it's all right. Looks like iOS 7-ish. There's a list of tickets. And this is what we changed it to. And actually, this is what it is today. We previously had removed status and the timestamp, and people really didn't like that. They wanted to be able to see the status of a ticket, and that makes sense. This is what the old comment UI used to look like, so really focused. There's a subject at the top. There's a clear comment of what the customer's problem is, and this is what we changed it to. So we brought some more state information right up in front of the user. We kept that comment there, but this didn't seem to, and brought some key actions one touch closer. So it was super jarring, and because our beta was so small, when we released, a lot of people woke up on the morning of our release to a brand new app. They didn't know how to use it. They were still logged in, but they thought, hey, what the hell is this? And so it has been a steep learning curve for our users. Um, the phrase hindsight is a beautiful thing is all too commonly used, but if I had to do it all again, we probably would have released earlier and released often. My personal preference would have been we would have had a separate App Store listing, marketed what we've built today as a tool for triaging and for agents on the go for light touch ticketing, and kept our old app there as the power user app, and allowed us to focus on triaging and to also work to cannibalize our user base from our old app. And as soon as the user base was small enough, cut the cord and kill the old app. Change has been hard, but change is good. Selfishly, as a developer, I talked about our technical debt in our code base. It wasn't maintainable. It was hard to use. We now have a maintainable code base that's modular, that's robust, and is set up in a way that will allow us to execute into the future. But this change has been hard for our customers, and we've had to hear all that feedback, and it's quite a humbling thing to do. But it's clear we have some hard work ahead of us, and we've fixed a lot of bugs since then. So, I don't know if you know this person, but Gus Balpatine, I think is how you pronounce it. He is the former CTO of Lonely Planet. And Lonely Planet, everybody might think of it as the book company, you know, you use it when you go traveling, but they actually were quite a heavy technology company, right? And so I saw him speak at a conference in Melbourne, and he said this phrase that resonates with me today. And then, are you fixing your problem, or are you fixing your customer's problem? And I think in hindsight, we were fixing our problem and masking it as our customer's problem. Now we're more focused than ever on solving our customer's problem again. But where we are today, so that was all the doom and gloom. Sorry about that, but I had to get it off my chest. But we learned a lot from this. So where are we at today? We're climbing on everything. So overall, we've increased our user base by 30,000 users per month. Our crash-free user sessions have gone right back up, so we're back up at 99.9%. And our App Store ratings are starting to improve. Our code base is now 70% Swift as of this morning. I don't know if everyone notices a little swallow on the car. I thought it was cool. But yeah, we're starting to turn our App Store reviews around. So all those frowns are being turned upside down. And I've got a couple of quotes from people that so this person only actually sent this yesterday. So they love using the app. Unfortunately, they have to give 24/7 IT support, so I feel bad for that person, but at least we can give them an app to make it easier. And this person, I feel really bad for. The app is better than desktop, and it's relieved their stress levels. I really fear for their stress levels. And so that has been our journey, and I just want to thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.